Good morning. You'll bear with me a little bit. I'm used to having a crew help me do what I need to do here, so I've got a few technical issues that I'm working on. Okay. False idols and alternative facts. 1 Corinthians 8, 1 through 13 says, "Now concerning food sacrificed to idols, we know all of us possess knowledge. Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. As to the eating of food offered to idols, we know that no idol in the world really exists, and that there is no God but one. Since some have become so accustomed to idols until now, they still think of the food they eat as offered to an idol, and their conscience, being weak, is defiled. Therefore, if food is a cause of their failing, I will never eat meat so that I may not cause one of them to fall." One of the great mysteries of these last 4 to 5 years is how people who claim faith in the very same religion can believe such very different things about the world that we both inhabit. We are Christians, albeit progressive Christians. And there are other Christians, conservative, evangelical Christians, some of whom have come to believe what are considered some very strange, bizarre, illogical, and inane ideas about what is real in the world. The best known constellation of such bizarre, illogical, and inane ideas is that known by the moniker QAnon, capital Q, capital A-N-O-N. The gist of QAnon is that there is a person who goes by the pseudonym Q, who is supposedly a top secret official in the US government. Q posts cryptic online messages about the truth of what's really happening in the world. QAnon proponents believe that Donald Trump was battling a cabal of deep state actors and their celebrity allies, who were in turn engaged in satanic worship, pedophilia, child trafficking, and cannibalism. You may remember when Q really burst onto the scene in November of 2016, when a follower of Q came to believe the current Q chatter that identified a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C., the Comet Ping Pong Pizza Restaurant, as the headquarters of the child trafficking ring because it was the favorite pizza place of John Podesta, whose emails had just been hacked. They believed it was the headquarters of this trafficking ring, and this person entered the restaurant armed to the teeth and fired his gun, demanding the release of the children. He was arrested, and there were no children being trafficked there. But that has not deterred the QAnon troops. Since then, the theory has expanded its reach to millions of devotees for whom Trump is the Messiah, and that Trump, having been crucified by the deep state on Tuesday, November 3rd, Good Tuesday, in the recent election, was to have insurrected his candidacy. Yeah, you heard me correctly. After being crucified on Good Tuesday, he was supposed to have insurrected his candidacy and reclaimed his presidency on Easter Wednesday, January 6th. But when they got to the Capitol, all they found was an empty tomb. Trump was not there. But this still did not deter them. They concluded that they had misinterpreted the signs and that the insurrection was really going to happen on January 20th. Trump would summon thousands of angels, troops, who would, under martial law, stop the inauguration of Biden and Harris and install Trump again as president. But when January 20th came and went, and this still didn't happen, they were not deterred. They even recreated the last chapter of the Gospel of Luke, where it says, "Then he led them out as far as Andrews Air Force Base, and lifting up his hands, he blessed them. While he was blessing them, he withdrew from them and was carried up into heaven on Air Force One. And they worshiped him. And they returned to Washington, D.C. with great joy, and they were continually in the Congress praising Trump." We might be tempted to say, this is crazy. How can they believe in this obviously false reality? But remember, this is not the first time such a thing has happened. We've seen other movements that claimed they were waiting for the Messiah. And when the return of the Messiah didn't happen, they didn't go away. They actually got stronger. In the summer of 1844, William Miller came to believe that Jesus would return on October 22nd, 1884. But Miller's failed prediction, known as the Great Disappointment, was not the end of his movement, but was the foundation of another movement that is still with us today, the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The very first disciples predicted Jesus would return almost immediately to claim victory over the Romans. And the Apostle Paul was foremost among those who taught that Jesus would come back soon. Clearly within the lifetime of those first disciples was his expectation. But as the delay of Jesus' return stretched on and on, the Christian church did not collapse in disappointment. It actually grew and grew until it became a worldwide religion, the most dominant worldwide religion. And we are still here, rationalizing, explaining, and justifying our continued faith. My point is that we are not going to convince the true believers in the QAnon conspiracy theory out of their beliefs. Paul's point in his letter to the Corinthians is that those who still believed the Roman gods were real, the ones he calls weak Christians, would not and should not be taught into the truth that there is only one real God and all the idols of the Roman pantheon were unreal, dead pieces of wood and stone. They would not be convinced that even though they had now become Christians, following in the way and the faith that Jesus taught, that they could ignore the gods that had ruled their lives right up until just yesterday. Paul said that the knowledge, truth, intellect, and superior understanding of the strong Christians was of no value whatsoever in their struggle to convince the weak Christians that eating meat dedicated to dead idols was not a violation of their Christian commitment not to have any gods before God. Paul said, your intellectual strength is your weakness because it distracts you from your true strength, love. He said, knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. Knowledge puffs us up. How much we know. We know the truth about the Bible. We know that it wasn't delivered by angels from the sky, that it was written by human beings who were trying to make their own points at their own time for their own purposes. Oh, we know all about the real Q, the source of the Gospels. We know about all the historical critical methodology that tells us the ways of really understanding the Gospels. But all of that knowledge that we have, that the Bible is not inerrant and how it came to be, all of that knowledge is useless in our struggle with the weak Christians. And is worse than useless because it distracts us from our real power, and that is the power of love. Knowledge puffs us up, but love builds up our siblings. And as Paul says, these were, after all, members of the same faith. Yes, he calls them weak believers, but they are still believers for whom Christ died, he says. And as we would say, they are weak believers whom the true God yet still loves. Is it our goal to destroy them? Do we become better Christians because we know the truth more than they do? Does our intellect bring us closer to our goal, to our God? No. Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. God does not notice us for our intellect. God notices us for our love. Paul says, don't be a know-it-all, be a love-it-all. I dare say it is easier to read and understand Don Cupid or Dominic Crossan than to love a QAnon sibling. So if we want to make this world a better place and to bring human civilization closer to the empire of God on earth, which is our rationalization of the second coming of the Christ, then we must lead with love and leave our knowledge behind. Learn to love, and you will have learned the hardest thing of all. Get your PhD in love, and God will call you one of God's own. Pointing out false idols and alternative facts cannot convert someone to the true faith. Only love can convert someone to love. Because only love builds up our weak siblings. It may not strengthen their minds, but it certainly strengthens their hearts. And our goal is to strengthen their heart. And the true goal of our faith is to love one another. Let the people of God say, amen.